Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and a lay counselor, and with me today is the wonderful Tim Denock of Break the Meta and Life Coach. And today is one of our live stream days where we talk about something that's been on our minds that we've processed through, studied, experienced, stuff like that. And once again, this week, the topic that I have planned is something that I don't have as planned as I would like to have it, but it is something that I've definitely had to work on for a lot in my life. And so I'm just going to really speak from my heart about this topic. So what we're going to be talking about today is resentment, the dangers of resentment, what resentment is, and how we can best ward against resentment, because it's really important. Biblically speaking, resentment is one of those top things that God is against. Unforgiveness, another word for it, towards people, is one of the top things that God is against. So I really want to take the time and just kind of share what God has brought me through when it came to dealing with resentment, and what I've learned about it, either through experiencing it firsthand, and also what other people have I've learned from other people or through my studies. So all that to say, the first thing and foremost that I always like to do is define what are we talking about. So Tim, how would you specifically define resentment?
I guess I would think of resentment as being something. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'm thinking about relationships because you know how we maintain and we often talk about how in building relationships there's always conflict and confrontation. I feel like resentment comes out of thinking, okay, well, because the conflict and the confrontation didn't turn out the way that I wanted, I'm not valued in this situation because it's all about me. So the person that I'm trying to build a relationship with, since it didn't reach my expectations, they don't value me. I really think that's what it is, you know?
The way that you're describing it almost sounds like a fear or something that they don't value the same way. So now in the way you described it, it's like I now want to stay away from that person.
Yeah, or it's like instead of engaging in conflict and confrontation as something to build a relationship, we look at it as something that is possibly going to destroy the relationship because we don't trust the other person. You know, because I'm thinking about all the people I've resented and all the resentment that I still deal with, because you're never going to be free from it completely. You know, there's always going to be that resentful thought. But a lot of times whenever I feel resentment towards somebody, it's almost like I'm over here and they're over there, and there's something dividing the two of us that has some kind of impact on my value, you know, and this needs to be fixed, and they're the ones that need to fix it in order for me to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, sometimes the things that happen to us, it is like a two-way street of something that person will need to fix, of the way they treated me or the way they affected me. And that's why it's so easy to get into resentment, because there has been a deficit of proper treatment of another person, respecting their value, respecting who they are. Like, the average person does not get upset about random things that happen. There's usually something that happened that hurt them. And in this case, it's more so linked to like how they value you, how do they respect you, or some of that nature. Correct? I did hear that correctly.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. For me, I would say like resentment has to do very close to like unforgiveness. You know, when someone does something against me, and it bothers me, I have the option at that point to become resentful towards them, which then in turn causes me to not trust them.
Mhm.
It causes me to want to distance myself from that person because if they did it once, they're capable of doing it a second time, and I do not want to be hurt twice. And so, like, it's just this. For me, it definitely is a fear-based thing. Um, because I don't know, security I guess is something that is important to me.
Mhm.
So if you threaten that, um, it could be it could if I'm not careful, it can turn straight into resentment of where now I want to keep this person on my life so that way they cannot hurt me again. And in some ways, that is important because like if someone does hurt me and they show no signs of, repentance of what they did, then sure, yeah, okay, I can't just trust them again the same way they did before. But if someone does something and it's the first time it happened or the second time or whatever, and it's you could just tell like this it's just it hit me the wrong way. If I don't talk about that with that person, if I don't or if I dwell on what they did to me, then it forms unforgiveness and I start to resent them. Um, it's just this part of me that just like, I don't even want to try to do anything. I'm going to start looking at you differently. I'm going to start treating you differently. I'm going to start looking at you less because you hurt me in some shape or form, and I'm not interested in doing anything on my part to overcome that. Now I resent you for what you
Mhm.
did, and I want you to pay for your crimes against me. It's moved over from not just distrust, but now also into this place of like, uh, revenge. If I
Brandon,
start, go ahead.
do you remember the first time that you felt resentful towards somebody?
Oh God, not the first time. There's no telling what the first time was, but I can tell you that I can remember some of the times I felt resentful. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking about how there's a huge disparity between different people types in my life because you have people that I respect and that I would follow and that I feel like I can learn from. And just thinking about what type of posture they have with other people and how they navigate hurt and difficult conversations and conflict and confrontation. And then you have other people on the opposite end of the spectrum where they almost seem like projects, you know?
Mm,
I got to be very careful saying that because I don't want to say people are projects because they're not. But it almost feels that way. It almost feels like they have such a small, narrow focus that little things will cause them to throw up a wall and a wall and a wall and a wall. And they think it's a boundary, but it's not a boundary at all. It's a wall where they keep people out because they don't trust them.
yeah.
And this show, Jerry Springer. I mean,
Hmm.
most of you know what his show is about. It's all um, using the term trailer trashy. Like that term makes me makes me cringe inside because it just makes me think about people who have given up on life. And I used to live in a trailer park. I came from that background, so I'm not saying that if you live in a trailer, you're trailer trash. Not at all. There's a. I have a friend who lives in a mobile home, and they said they were talking about their neighbors and about how their neighbors just like let go of the yard, and they were like, we live in a trailer, but we don't have to treat it like a trailer park.
Mm,
Like that mentality. It's completely different. You can live in a nice mobile home and respect yourself and respect your life too.
absolutely.
But I think the crux of this and the thing that I'm trying to tease out is that a lot of people that have that mentality just look at the world like the world owes me everything. Everybody owes me everything. I don't have a sense of value. So if you threaten anything that I think I find my value in, like, the type of clothes I wear, how much money I have in my bank account, or the way I see myself in my profession, or the respect that I think I should inherently have. If you threaten that, I'm going to throw up a wall, and it's like the people that are in that frame of mind just seem to have a tenacity or maybe more of a propensity towards resentment. And it's just so easy for them to give that out, like resenting this and resenting this and resenting this, instead of thinking to themselves, okay, what is my role in this? And if this person or entity is coming at me from a position where they don't honor, respect, or value me, why is that? Is there something I need to change from? And I think, resentment kind of goes hand in hand with the self-reflection there. It's like, I don't think somebody could be truly introspective and think themselves first, like I need to fix me first, and also resent another person if they actually think about it.
I honestly feel like resentment is a self-defense mechanism that people pick up as a defense against being hurt again. But the problem with it is that it just remembers the problem, but doesn't give you the necessary energy to go forward and resolve the problem. So instead, you're just keeping a list of what they did against you, so that way they can't fool you twice. But you're not going back and figuring out the heart of why they did what they did, or asking the questions or things of that nature. So it just keeps you stuck in this place of, I don't like this person, which then, because you don't engage them again, your brain is now open to every sort of imagination regarding that person as to why you think they did what they did. And so now you're rehearsing through your head how you're going to respond should a moment come up and you have to talk about it, but never actually go to talking about it. And now you're in this mental hell of what happened, why did it happen, but never actually going to resolve the real crux of the issue.
Yeah. Well, thinking about the 1 Corinthians 13, where it says we're supposed to have faith in people, we're supposed to hope for the best and endure all things and not keep record of wrongs. I mean, that's love, loving people. But I feel like resentment is just one of those things where it builds a case for reasons why you shouldn't do that. And every time you add a brick to your resentment wall, it gets so much easier to add more and more and more, because you look back and it's lazy, And I say that not like accusing people of being lazy, but it's so easy, because when you resent somebody, it's not a relation that it's not relational. Resentment is not relational. Resentment is something that you do for yourself because it's the easy way out.
Right.
Because a lot of times the reason we resent people is because we're not holding ourselves accountable to a higher standard of thinking.
Yeah. The honest truth about resentment is that the Bible is right about it. The way to heaven is a narrow path, and few find it. The way to hell is wide and open and broad, and many people are on it. Like, resentment truly is the lazy path to take. Like, it's not to say that you yourself are lazy. It's just that and ironically, the lazy way is not the best for you way, and it doesn't make you feel good in the end way either. Because it's like you're just stopping at, I don't want you to hurt me, so I'm going to hold these list of things against you, and by keeping you out of my life, you can never hurt me again, but I'll never know exactly what happened, so now I'm just stuck with this what if. What happened? Why did it happen? Does it have something to do with me or that person? Like, there could be just a litany of things you should be feeling that are going to continue to be felt, honestly, until you have the conversation with the person and forgive them. And honestly, I mean, like, forgiveness begins, honestly, before you get to talking to the person about what they did. But still, there needs to be that conversation of, why did you do this? And talking about it, but we'll get to that. So I want to take 1 second and look real quick, though, at what the dictionary has to specifically say about definition of resentment, just to make sure that we're covering this puppy well. Definition of resentment. Yes. So it says, let me go to the Merriam-Webster here. Resentment. A feeling of indignant displeasure or persistent ill will at something regarded as wrong, insult, or injury. So a feeling of indignant displeasure or persistent ill will at something regarded as wrong, insult, or injury. So right off the bat, negative. Synonyms. Down, grievance, grudge, score. That's a word that sticks out to me. So yeah, essentially, we're looking at unforgiveness. We're looking at scorekeeping Resentment is you're constantly harboring ill will towards a person because of what they did, because of and it's legitimate. Like, let's look at it again. It says something was regarded as wrong, insert injury. So it's not like what you're holding the resentment towards is something arbitrary. It is towards something that is wrong. It's an injury. It's an insult. So it has legitimacy to it. Like, people don't just typically, unless they have anger issues, they don't typically get angry at nothing.
Well, that's the thing. When you're resentful towards somebody, just the phrase "cut them off." I cut negative people out of my life. I see so much of this in social media these days, where it talks about just cutting all the toxic people out of your life, and it's like that's being exalted. Like that's a good way to live life. I mean, the Bible does talk about how if there are dead branches, the Lord cuts them away and prunes back what's good, which makes sense because everybody goes through seasons. But just thinking, I'm going to cut all the toxic people out of my life. Well, are they actually toxic, or are you just being resentful? Because, thinking about confrontation again, and if you think that confrontation is a bad thing, you're wrong. We can talk about that. But here's the thing about confrontation and conflict. Basically, whenever you have a conflict and confrontation, there are two sides to a picture, right? Now, you have side one and side two, and in the middle somewhere is truth, which cannot be changed. There is a truth. There's always a truth. There's always going to be a truth. You don't have to defend it because it's true. Yeah. Period. That's how it is. Like 1 + 1 = 2. That's always going to be how it is. And if there are mathematicians out there that have some kind of weird formula or whatever, while 1 + 1 = 2 is not true, that's okay. You can be wrong. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you have two sides to something, you should be engaging from the position of, okay, well, I might be wrong. Like, I had somebody the other day that said, okay, well, you think you're a Christian and you believe in God, and you're telling me as an atheist that there's information out there that I might not know. I must be wrong about there not being a God. I was like, yeah, And that's an interesting concept too, because I believe in God, they do not, right? And there's a truth here somewhere. There either is or is not a God.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to hold them to that standard, I have to hold myself to the same standard. I might be wrong about this. I don't think I am, but I should be willing to come together in confrontation and conflict and say, okay, well, let's test this.
Why do you believe there's no God?
Right. Well, I think the main question is, why do I feel like I have to be right and you have to be wrong? Why do I have to feel like we can't just come together to find the answer ourselves and believe in the truth? And I think resentment has something to do there, because when you have these two sides and you just cut somebody off, you label them as toxic or wrong or bad or controversial or contrary to whatever you believe, and you don't even give them the opportunity to prove themselves or to talk. And it's that in and of itself is toxic when you don't allow people to engage. Because if you look at the life of Jesus, he went to the very people that were sinners. He didn't go to the people that were trying to be perfect. I mean, when they came to him, he was like, well, let's talk about how you guys view life because it's not good. But he went and he engaged with people that were sick. He engaged with people that, did a lot of bad things. And when I say bad things, I'm talking about non-religious things, that they were drunkards or, prostitutes, whatever. And he is basically saying, well, why do you do these things? Here's the truth. Let's talk about why you do these. Because God always focuses on your heart before he focuses on the situation. Yeah. But being resentful focuses on the situation before the heart. You don't even give people a chance to explain the heart. You don't even give them the opportunity to engage the heart. Yeah. You just cut them off and throw a label on them.
Yeah, and so like that's the thing. Like, yeah, you want to be you don't want any form of resentment, because honestly, like, the amount of people that I've actually had to cut from my life, if I were to give it a percent, I would give it, I don't know, a very low percentage, 15, 10, 15, 20% of the people. Most of them I have no reason to cut from my life. Maybe I don't spend as much time with that person because we just don't connect in the same way. But otherwise, the people that have actually had, like, there was a time a couple years ago where I drew a diagram for my own sake to see the people who were close to me and the people who were distant from me and why. and I only had one name that was in the do not trust zone. And that person had done enough to sit themselves out there because they had actively tried to manipulate me. And even every time we would try to reconcile, there was still manipulation going on. And it hadn't changed. And I'd given them once, twice, 3 times to the chance for them to change. And it still didn't happen. At that point, it's just toxic. If I've done my part to reconcile with them and they're still doing the same thing, I cannot keep that person in my life. But that's rarely the case. Most of the time, there's just a breakdown in communication that happens, and the person simply doesn't know me enough to be able to treat me in a way that helps best. And I have to work to, I don't know, just kind of teach people who I am and what not necessarily people have to, bend to my needs per se. Hello there, Deathbane. But that, to just help people know where my boundaries are and stuff of that nature, where I begin.
Speaking of cutting people out of your life, I'm glad you're here, Deathbane.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
Brandon, I want to engage in this question I threw in chat. Should you ever actually cut people off from your life?
Well,
I don't think you should.
It depends. I kind of sit on the side of the fence that there is a definitive point where you have to cut them out because keeping them in your life is just inviting absolute destruction on your life. So, again, referring to the people that I have legitimately moved to the outer rings, they have proven themselves to constantly be manipulative. Every time I try to bring it in, they haven't changed. They keep trying to move me in such a way that I'm always wrong, and I need to eventually take care of their child with Down syndrome. That was the way they keep maneuvering me. If I were to keep... Huh?
That was the way they kept maneuvering.
That's the way they kept maneuvering me. Thank you.
And
so if I were to keep them in my life, all I'm doing is inviting more manipulation, more gaslighting, more confusion. So in that case, it's just toxic. It's just the...
Well, Brandon, I want to challenge that.
Okay.
Because I disagree. The idea of cutting people off, I'm just thinking about what it would be like if God cut me off. If I did something so heinous. We think about unpardonable sins like murder or pedophilia or, there's all number of things that, if you see some dude walking down the street and you know that he was convicted of being drinking and driving, it's like, okay, he drinks sometimes. But if you're seeing a dude walk down the street and you know that he's a convicted pedophile and, he intentionally sought after 5-year-olds and molested them and stuff, it's like, let me. But, the crazy thing is God doesn't even cut them off. He's always chasing after them because, sin is apart from people's identity. But, thinking, should you ever cut people off from your life? It's like, I think there's a stark difference between cutting them off and enforcing boundaries.
Okay, let me make some clarifications here. If I were to notice that they were repentive of what they did and that they were starting to come out of the manipulation that they typically spin, I would have them... Not exactly they would be immediately back full in my life as if nothing ever happened, but I would begin to open the door back up to them for the communication. They're not permanently out of my life, but they're at the moment until I see evidence that they're safe people again, I'm not going to let them in. Just in the same way, if someone was a convicted, pedophile, you wouldn't just immediately bring them to your children. You would have layers, you have different walls of which they have to work their way through before you can trust them with your children. You don't immediately say, I'm never going to deal with you again, you're out of my life.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I think the verbiage there that I want to clear up, and I think we're kind of saying the same thing. There's a difference between enforcing boundaries and creating boundaries and adding more boundaries as needed and cutting people off, because when you're resentful towards somebody, you don't enforce boundaries. There are no boundaries. You throw up a wall. Guys, the difference between a wall and a boundary is that a wall is meant to keep people out, whereas a boundary has a gate. Boundaries always have gates. You have the opportunity to open that when you deem fit, and there's always the opportunity to heal that relationship. But when you throw up a wall, there is no possibility,
Can I say something?
Oh. Oh, hello.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, so you're both kind of going, oh yes, leave it as a possibility that some people can return. But I personally think that there are to like a point at which leaving that door open is too risky because there are people who are manipulative and will take advantage of anything you leave them open to because they will lie to you to make you like people who are genuinely manipulative and gaslight people, they lie and they trick you. So leaving that door open isn't just leaving the door open for the truth, it's also leaving the door open for their lies.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if they say, oh, I will change, I'm working on it, and you see like they do change, that might only be for a time. That might be just a lie.
Yeah. And
So
I think
some people you just can't do that with.
I think we're on the same page though. Like, we're not saying that if someone has like, and I'm not saying if someone who has a track record for being manipulative, and I know that and I've experienced that with them, that I just immediately bring them all the way through back to the close proximity of my heart. I'm not doing that. There has to be a process of which, like, okay, so especially if there is a person who's,
And I understand that. I understand what you're saying. Like you have to let them in slowly. But I'm saying even that can still be dangerous. Like
well,
I'm
yes.
saying that there are certain people who are genuinely more manipulative than others. Like there's people with manipulative traits. Like I know friends personally who do it, but they don't do it on purpose, and it's more just like, oh, when they think something, they want other people to agree with them. So they'll like be like, and these are why. And it's like sometimes they'll do things that are slightly manipulative. But I mean there are genuinely bad people who manipulate people intentionally and would do that. And if you recognize that they're manipulating you, and it's very much not minor things, it's major things, that's when you should cut that person off.
Yeah,
not leave the door open for them to come back. Cut them off entirely.
yeah, we recognize fully that allowing that person anywhere in proximity would be a risk. What we are saying is that in order, the danger with resentment is, let's say that person actually genuinely does change. If there is any form of resentment in my heart regarding that person and they change, there is a lot of healing that can come out of a person who has been, one, there's a lot of healing that can come out of it. Two, there's a lot of ministry that can be done if there is no resentment in your heart towards that person, because even if the person has proven that they are untrustworthy and you never do get the chance to bring them back into your life, resentment closes the door for any potential ministry to that person, plus it leaves a lot of problems that you have. It doesn't resolve the issue. This is,
You don't need to resent the person.
No.
I'm saying there's still like I don't have to resent a person. There's a person in my life that I will I have to remind myself not to interact with them because I know it's unhealthy for me to do. It is a bad idea for me, so I cut this person off because it's a bad idea for me. I hold no resentment towards them. The problem is I cared too much about them. And that's why I cut them off. Because they were manipulative and I cared too much. And I still probably do. So I cut them off.
There's a healthy and unhealthy way, I guess, if we're going to use the term cut them off, to cut them off. Because you can cut them off and say, no, never again. And just like, kind of like that commercial, stop, Crohn's, get out of here, diarrhea. Like you can do that, but at the same time, I think the healthier way to do it and to quote unquote cut somebody off is just to maintain more boundaries. And what that looks like is saying, okay, so you've done something that has caused me to mistrust you. I'm still going to love you, but you're not allowed to come into my yard. And then if they do something else, you put up another fence. And you know, when you maintain a specific standard in your life and you just communicate, hey, this is not okay.
I think the thing is there though is I at least personally with this person specifically, it's the very fact of my own emotions towards them make it the most unhealthy I could do is to let them back in. Like I genuinely can't, because anytime I even like, oh, maybe I should, then I'm like, oh, that's not good for me. That's unhealthy for me to do.
But what we're not really focusing so much on that outliner situation where there is a person who is truly manipulative and you need to keep them at a
But you need
distance,
to recognize those situations. That's what I'm saying.
Which we are doing. But that's we are more so focusing on situations where you have resentments towards healthy people because there has been no time put into figuring out why this person did something that seems similar to an actual manipulative person but actually wasn't, because the way they presented it and their heart behind it, not taking the time to kind of look and see and address that. That's what the main focus of today's thought raid is.
And also, real quick, Camden, haha, use your real name.
Oh, you got me.
So something that you said there was a key indicator of the difference between cutting somebody off and setting a boundary. You said that it causes feelings in me. It causes thoughts in me. You're identifying that you have an issue with allowing them in a boundary. And I think that's a boundary in and of itself. And I think that's really healthy. Identifying, hey, normally it would be okay for you to come in here, but because I'm dealing with an issue, I need to keep you at a safer distance. That's still a difference between cutting somebody off. That's just saying, hey, let's put a comma here because I'm not healthy right now.
Yeah. So yeah, there's just different levels.
I would say it's a semicolon. Okay.
there's different levels of that, but today what I'm trying to focus on more so is just the resentment towards the average day person in your life, or the people that are close to you, like your parents, for instance, who would be healthy, but yet there is just, it could be really easy
or
to become
political
resentful.
Parties,
or just or things that are outside of your control. Just those particular areas. And I
resent Democrats because they did this. I resent
Republicans
them
because
Chinese
they did this.
because they did this. I can do that because I'm Asian, guys.
What?
It's okay.
But that's the thing. It's like, it's the limiting factor of not being able to even consider seeing it from their side, because you just cut them off and you say, I resent you. I resent who you are. I resent what you're thinking, what you're doing. I'm not even going to consider it. And the issue there is, by resenting a party, resenting a person, you place yourself within a bubble of confirmation bias, and that's not healthy.
Yeah.
That's absolutely not healthy. You might think it is because it feels good, but guys, when you're challenged, that's how you grow. You grow because you fail 80% of the time. You don't grow because of your successes. Successes just let you plateau. But you need that uncomfortable space to be challenged and think differently. There's this guy, and I talked about this before. There's this guy on Facebook that I follow named Morg, and his thought process is completely contrary to mine. He's very, he shaved his eyebrows, and he's kind of, I guess he's a Satanist. I don't know. He just wears all these weird snake symbols, and he talks about atheism and why God doesn't exist. And I'm like, okay, if I'm prideful and I just want to cut him off, I can just unfollow because that's comfortable for me. But it's like, if I really believe that God is who he says he is, and I believe that I'm doing it the right way, this guy should not threaten me. So let me put up a boundary here. I'm not just going to believe what you say at face value because I feel threatened and because I don't feel like I'm confident. I should lean into that and say, okay, well, let me see what you have to say, and let me reconcile to God. God, why is this true or why is this not true? I could, once again, it would be super easy for me just to cut that relationship off, and the relationship being me following him on social media. But, part of not having resentment towards his lifestyle, resentment towards his thought process is saying, well, maybe I need to heal something in me so I don't feel offended by that. Or maybe I need to be open to whatever truth he has that I don't believe, even though it feels threatening.
Mm-hmm. I think there would still probably need to be balance in that, because if you just completely surround yourself with people who think opposite, well, you're going to naturally take on what they believe, regardless if you truly believe that or not, or if it's true or not. So, I mean, in that sense, you would want to be conscientious, because it's like they say, you become like your friends, so if you're constantly ingesting, God's not real, God's not real, God's not real, God's not, of course you're going to believe that God's not real, regardless of how strong your faith is. It doesn't matter. It's just, that's all you see. That's your echo chamber. But at the same time, yeah, I think it's good to get to a place
but
where...
also you can have the inverse.
Yeah, well, yeah, yes, there's confirmation bias in multiple directions. So, at the same time, you could have it that this way of thinking and faith is always correct and there's no other way. So, all that to say, where was I even? And now I've lost track of what I was going. Let's refocus.
So we're talking about resentment.
So I want to go into, before we go into how we can ward against resentment, I want to go now, at least take a second and look into the dangers of resentment and where it can lead you. And we've kind of already alluded to that multiple times through different ways, but just to kind of make it solidified and clear. One of the things that I've learned in my personal life, the dangers of having unforgiveness or resentfulness towards a person, is I immediately get afraid of them. And I live my life afraid of what's the next thing they could do to me. And I begin to prepare for all of these unlikely scenarios of them hurting me because I've already put up the initial boundary necessary to keep them out from hurting me again. So now I'm living my life in fear of being controlled by them, rather than recognizing that they have no control over me and being able to actively think about ways of blessing them, and no longer am I afraid of them. That is one major pitfall that resentment has caused in my life. So, in example, the people in my life that I've been talking about today as the example of the day. When the first fallout happened, and the only fallout happened, really, where we finally realized, and I say we, I mean, this was something that affected both me and my parents, that this group of people, this family, was manipulative and toxic, and we needed to put up a boundary with them. There was a lot of fear that I had to process through, almost PTSD that I had. In fact, in some ways, I wouldn't call it as extreme as like it's a person who I knew exploded next to me, PTSD, where it's like that. But it definitely, just after being through a situation of 2 hours of being talked about how I'm terrible and I'm trash and I just need to get on my knees and repent and maybe they'll forgive me, and spending 2 hours of that where the person is angry and coming at me as I am in a chair, there was a lot of fear that I had to deal with, and the unforgiveness and the resentment that I had to fight was the crux that held up that fear. And so as I began to forgive them, a lot of that fear of what they could do to me dissipated, to the point where now I'm not afraid of them anymore. But having resentment, all the times that I struggled with unforgiveness towards them, as long as that unforgiveness and that resentfulness existed in me, I was actively afraid of them and wanted to do everything that I could to make sure that they got back what they did to me, or at the very least that they got discommunicated from the church that I was going through and kicked up, because I don't want them to hurt any other people. And not all of that is necessarily bad, because like they do and have hurt other people, but real quick, Deathbane, while you're not talking, could you mute yourself? Because I hear you're typing in the background and stuff. Thank you. So in the meantime, like, what they did, they did and had hurt other people in the process, but while I held that resentment, I was still in bondage to them. I myself was constantly looking behind every bush, looking through every situation, and I was seeing myself as a victim to that person. That's where the resentment held me. And I think another damage that resentment can hold towards a person is it causes, again, it slowly isolates you. Because if you allow for any space of resentment in your life, then you're allowing for pockets of your life to naturally be rejectful towards others if someone comes close to the area that you are already resentful towards. So if anyone has a characteristic that is similar So in the sense of this person manipulated me, if I never forgave them, then anything that comes similar to that, whether it actually is the same thing or not, I can end up interpreting that as they're being manipulative. I need to cut them out of my life immediately. And before you know it, I'm going to be cutting a lot of people out of my life that don't need to be cut out of my life, because people oftentimes do similar things, but they're not apples to apples. So we've talked about, in my life presently, how I've been working through insecurities and learning how not to let that define me. There is a whole class of people that in the past rejected me, and I've been having to unlearn that and let go of any resentments that I have towards it, because otherwise anyone who holds that similar characteristics as the initial people that rejected me now becomes a threat. And then I end up rejecting entire people because they rejected me because they had similar characteristics. And I miss out on genuinely good people that may act similar to that, but aren't actually that. Like, the brain is really good at finding patterns. Like, as something happens, the brain is able to remember all the things that has happened to you. And it's like, is this something I've been through? Yes, I've been through this 15 other times, and this is the results that happen in general. And so it can see the patterns, but it's not always really great at seeing the new after it's established a certain pattern. And it takes time and effort necessary to form new pathways. I think they've said, I cannot give you the exact quote from this, so don't quote me on this, but I feel like I have seen an article that has mentioned that by forgiving people, that enables the brain to form new pathways in situations that otherwise are blocked up with the unforgiveness. It's like it is hard to move forward into where you're presently at if you're holding on to things that happened to you prior.
Well, I think a big piece of that, Brandon, also is the idea of hope. Because, we were talking earlier about how every time you throw up a wall instead of a boundary, you completely cut people off. When you throw up enough walls, you find yourself boxed in, and you can't even get out, because boundaries have gates, walls do not. And when you have walls all the way around you, you think they're for your defense, and they do keep you safe and secure, but it prevents you from going anywhere.
Right.
And when you throw down a boundary, you're thinking to yourself, okay, there is a possibility that this is going to get better. There is a possibility that this relationship is going to get healed. There's a possibility that they value me. There's a possibility that it's going to get better. And when you don't think it's going to get better, when you don't think there is a possibility, an inkling, an iota of hope, you give up. And then you just start wondering, like, why am I so sad? Why am I feeling so defeated? Why do I not look forward to tomorrow? And as you were saying, Brandon, your brain has this tendency to build up a preconceived notion on what's going to happen if you step into the unknown. Well, it's all the PTSD thing, I've always been hurt when I've done this, so I can't do this anymore. Right.
Right.
If I thought about that when I work out, like, working out sucks, man. I hate it so much. Push-ups, pull-ups, burpees, it sucks. I hate it. But if I engaged in that and I thought to myself, it's never going to get better, it's never going to change, I'm never going to see results, this is not doing anything in my life, I'm never going to want to go. And I'm still honestly kind of there. Mm-hmm. Whenever we go to the gym, it's mostly compliance, and it's not my heart saying I want to go to the gym. It's like, all right, Ariane wants me to go to the gym, and I know this is healthy, and let me force myself. And it's like, I try to let my mind wander when I'm at the gym, because I hate being there so much,
Bring yourself some music.
Yeah, but the thing is, I identify that it is possible that I'm going to get over that hump, and one day I'm going to look in the mirror and say, ooh, I actually have abs. Oh my gosh. Oh, dude, like, I'm looking down, I don't see that roll on my side anymore. Like, I was doing push-ups this morning, or we were doing burpees or something. I looked down, and like, the fat on my stomach is hanging a different way. And it's because I'm losing it, And it's like, oh, I'm making progress. And the same happens with relationships. When you have at least a small glimmer of hope and you lean into that, and you're looking for it, and you're not focused on why it's going to fail. You're focused on, well, the 1% chance it can succeed. That 1% chance becomes a 2% chance, becomes a 4%, becomes an 8%. And the more you lean into that, the easier it is to start breaking down those walls of resentment. But it takes intentionality to do so, because as we were talking about earlier, building resentment is lazy because it's easy.
Yeah.
Because building relationships is hard, because
it
takes denying yourself. It takes taking chances on another person. It takes being vulnerable, which is not comfortable.
Right.
It takes being honest, which is absolutely not comfortable. And in doing so, there's always the opportunity that the other person is going to let you down, because they're also broken, and they're also working through resentment. They're also working through their wall of awful. They're working through all that stuff as well, you know? And, I was talking, I think with you, Brandon, a couple weeks ago about getting married. And I was like, I mean, think about it, guys. What are the chances that you're going to find somebody, and, taking the Christian stuff off the table, like God's view on it, taking somebody of a sex that you prefer, right? Well, let's say you're just looking for a partner. Taking somebody of a sex that you prefer, a body type that you prefer, in the same life situation, same age, going the same direction, you like some of the same things, you agree on certain things, you're alive in the same time period with the same similar financial background, and all these stars have to align to make it work, right? Plus they also have to like you the same way. How crazy is that? It's like, that makes my mind explode. And there's so many people that have gone on date after date after date after date after date thinking, man, this sucks. I failed so many times, And you have some people that just get so resentful of that process that they cut it off, and they think to themselves, this is not worth it. This is not worth it because I've been hurt, or I failed so many times in the past. But you never know, man. Like, the next time you go out, you might meet that person. It's totally it's always possible, Like, I went how many years before I met you, Brandon?
A lot.
How many? 5, 6 years ago?
Well, no, more than that.
7 years.
It's 2014.
2014, so 7 years ago.
7 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, I went through 30 years of my life without a solid friend like Brandon. And if I had given up, I never would have met him. And the dude was, he was in my wedding party. That's kind of crazy. And now we do all this together. And my wife, man, I didn't meet Ariane until 2015 or 16, something like that, And I could have gone through the resentment of, wow, women suck, or, the dating world sucks, or the cultural climate of America sucks because a man has to be this and this and this and this and this to qualify as a good boyfriend or husband. I'm never going to, I give up, right? I resent this whole process. And, it just makes me sad that some people do that. But anyways, Brandon, I think I'm rambling now.
Yeah, but the points are, it's important. Resentment causes, what's the word? It causes sedentary. It causes it cements you in place. Is the best way I know how to put it at this moment. You stop growing when there's resentment in your life in the area that you allow space for resentment. Forgiving a person doesn't equal trusting a person. Like, it is safe and okay to forgive a person, because it doesn't mean you have to start trusting them. It just means you have to let go of the grievances and recognize we're all human. We've all made mistakes. We've all done things that aren't good. And to hold this person accountable means you're going to have to hold yourself accountable, and the both of you are going to sink together. So someone has to let go. Hopefully the two of you can let go and you can both grow together again, but at least someone has to let go. Otherwise, you're both going to sink into the sea of forgetfulness.
And Brandon, what's crazy is, I'm thinking, if God is who the Bible professes him to be, and who he professes himself to be, and who people revere him to be, if he is the creator of all the universe and the stars and the dirt and the French bulldogs and the butcher block countertops and the t-shirts, if he's the creator of all this stuff, and he is the ultimate judge and jury, and he is the one that's going to say, Tim, here's the fruit of your life. Let me judge this. If he is that person, then why is the definition of who he is as his character? Why does it say keeps no record of wrongs? because you're talking about somebody taking the first step. And it's so crazy, man. It's like it's always the person in the relationship that takes the first step that is the most mature. It's always that person, and oftentimes in my relationship with my wife, it's her. She almost always takes the first step, and I respect her so much because in so many areas with that, like I fall short. Like I honestly feel like she's a lot more emotionally mature than I am in so many ways. But looking at God, it's like he has no pretense upon which he builds the foundation of my relationship with him or how he sees my value. His only pretense is you are my son, And when I mess up in whatever areas I mess up, how frequently I mess up, it would be so easy for him to say, well, there's billions of other people in this world. I'm going to focus on them instead. But he wants a personal relationship with me. And so he drops the veil of all the records of my wrongs. And he says, you know what? Casting that to the side, that sucks. But who you are is so much more important than what you do. And that's why earlier I was saying that it's so important not to just cut people off. It is important to create boundaries because, sin and consequence are that it has the relationship that it does because all it is being apart from God. When you break relationship with God on your accord, there's a consequence for that. And it's not God saying, well, I mean, let me smite this guy. It's like, no, you walked out of the presence of all that's good and all that's clean and all that's holy and all that's sacred into something that's self-fulfilling, thinking that it's going to replace it. And when you eat the consequences of that, it's like, ooh, that sucks. But then when you engage with God again, it's like he doesn't keep a record of that. He's not like, well, you have to earn this back. I mean, that's how it was in the Old Testament before we had the Holy Spirit, before Jesus came. And that's why Jesus is the way,
Yep.
But, God doesn't resent you.
Yeah.
Right. And Jesus doesn't resent. Dude, he was being whipped and, he went up on the cross. And if anybody was going to resent somebody, it was going to be him. Because it was the people that he came to save that were the people that were torturing him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, man! And that's the standard we're supposed to follow.
Jesus' own people accused him of crimes he didn't commit and turned him over to a people that were foreign to his people, the Romans, to be crucified and humiliated before everyone. And he was abandoned by all the people that said they were going to follow him, including Peter, who said, "I will die with you," and then he ran from him instead. He had every right to be resentful and to be bitter because he was perfect, but he didn't, and he forgave them as he was dying. Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that's amazing. And so that's the standard of which we are called to let go of the crimes done against us and to forgive them as we have been freely forgiven by Jesus. So I want to go into how do you ward against resentment? Because we know that it's not good. We know, what it is, but how do you ward against resentment? And I think we've been talking about the main important thing is we've got to know what are your boundaries. Like if you can't determine where you begin and where you end and you don't take any time to figure that out, then people are going to make demands of your life perpetually and take things away from you that you might not want to give. And you have to figure out where do you begin and where do you end, so that way you can freely give of yourself on your own accord and no one can say that. Now, obviously, that's not always going to be an option, but if you can at least figure out where you begin, where you end, you can set up proper boundaries. It's a lot harder to be resentful because now if someone crosses over it, that's an area that I should have been defending, and I allowed them to step in and take something away from me that wasn't meant for them to take, whether that be how they make you feel, whether that be your own literal possessions, whether that be whatever. If you know what's yours and what's not yours, then it's a lot easier to be less resentful or not resentful because now you have that defined and you can defend it or not defend it on your own accord. And again, that could be tricky because there are situations that even are promised to us that we will be taken places we don't want to go and have to do things we don't want to do. So what do you do in those situations? But at least start. I would say at least in this moment what's coming to mind is to start with who am I And what am I willing to give and not give? What am I willing to feel and not feel? And to be able to set up boundaries, and I'll honestly recognize that boundaries towards a person doesn't mean you're completely cutting them out of your life. It's just this particular aspect of who they are makes me feel a specific way, and I don't want to feel that way. So whenever you get like this specific way, I have to back up. Like, this, what you're doing here makes me anxious, and I know I cannot be anxious. So when you start talking about this, I'm going to kindly ask that you stop. Kind of thing.
Something really good about boundaries also is that it helps you understand the relationship between intimacy and commitment. The way people gain access to the inner court of your boundaries is by giving you the commitment, right? Now, let me give you an example. It is safe to say that I have created boundaries around my relationships with other women since I'm married.
Yes.
It's not that the feelings of desire, the feelings of, oh, she's hot or she's attractive or I like that quirk about her, or she looks nice in that dress, none of that has gone away. It's always going to be there, But I have to keep a boundary where it's like, okay, I'm not going to engage that. I'm not going to engage them. If a girl comes up to me at the gym and is like, hey, what's going on? It's like, yeah. What is going on? Showing off my wedding ring, And the thing about this is when I was single, I kind of did the same thing too. Like, it was really difficult to get into my inner court, or the inner court of my boundaries, because I was looking for something very specific. When I found somebody that met those requirements, or the cost of entry that I designated, I said, okay, well, come on in, let's test this. And so I opened the gate, I let Ariane in, and we started talking, and we found out, okay, well, this boundary, this is a good place for you. You can hang out within this inner court, but there were still other boundaries that I had to keep up. Like I was not going to have sex with her because I wasn't married to her. I wasn't going to give her a wedding ring. We weren't going to live together. There were many things that I threw up as a personal boundary, saying, well, you have to earn this with commitment. And it's the same on the other side of the court too, because there were boundaries that I was earning entry into myself. And so, thinking about navigating boundaries in that way, the way that you cross that hole of resentment and throw up boundaries, it's okay, well, what commitment do I require for the intimacy of blank? And what that might look like in your life is, if you have somebody that's toxic, okay, well, I'm not going to cut them out completely, but I see that they are loved by God. I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that they have value. I acknowledge that they're operating from a place of brokenness. Man, every meth head that's ever come up to you asking you for money, or every homeless person, not equating them because not all homeless people are meth heads, they've just got issues they're going through. Much like every pastor that comes to you that's secretly cheating on his wife, they're broken and they have an issue. But as Brandon said, there's a difference between creating a boundary. There's a difference between loving and trusting somebody.
Yes,
right?
Loving and trusting someone, yes.
And what that looks like is when you love somebody but don't trust them, it's like, you have to stay away from me up to like 7 boundaries out, but I still acknowledge that you have value. You're just not safe to be within these boundaries, right? But getting back to the analogy of intimacy and commitment, once you acknowledge that somebody is willing to pay the cost of admission, right? And this is breaking down that wall of resentment. Once you acknowledge that somebody is willing to step up to the plate, willing to take risk, willing to confront, willing to see that you're valuable, you give them admittance into the next inner boundary. And it's like, okay, well, you're committing to being here. Let me see what kind of intimacy this looks like. What can I give you as a reward for earning entry?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the whole process. You just don't cut people off and say, you're not worth anything. It's no, well, your actions have not gained you entry to this level of intimacy with me, so you have to stay this far away from me.
Yeah.
You can earn that back. It's going to be really hard. When people break your trust, it is absolutely worthy to make them earn it back.
Yeah.
That's worthwhile, and it makes sense. But it's not okay to say you are your actions. You are
Yeah.
your behaviors. You are an alcoholic. That's who you are. You are a pedophile. That's who you are. You are a
No.
Democrat, Republican. You are a Christian. You're a Muslim. Whatever. It's not okay just to write
Label
somebody
someone.
off and give them a label.
Right.
That's not okay, because they are a person before any of their actions, and they can always
Yeah.
choose differently in this moment.
Yeah.
And that is the key.
In light of the visualization that you've been developing here, I think, yes, there should probably be, and this is the case with the family members, even for me, even though I don't trust them, I have a very, very, very outer far court that says you are a human being that was created in the image of God, therefore I love you because God made you and I respect you, but you're not going to be in my inner courts until the day comes where I see significant change. And I know, because I've known them for so long, what them coming out of what they're at looks like. I know what it is. They have never, ever apologized for anything they've ever done. And so I know that you're never going to be able to make it into the inner courts until there is an apology that was not warranted. I'm not asking for you to apologize. I'm not talking to you. So if you just randomly come to me and you apologize, okay, now let's see what happens. And then they're not going to my heart. Now they're coming to the next section. They're like, let's see what happens. If a person is truly changed, they will make their way back to your heart, because you will see as they go through section to section that they prove themselves worthy. A person who has truly repented has a changed, palpable lifestyle that shows they're not who they used to be. And if you don't have that first section that says you're valuable as a human being, then they can't even get to that. If someone has truly changed of the wicked things they've done, the true bad things they've done to you, if they truly have, and there's evidence of that, there's so much healing that can come out of that as you begin to learn to trust them again, and they prove that they're trustworthy. I've heard many stories of people who have lived a wild, selfish, self-serving, narcissistic life, but then came out of it, and the good that's come out of that is amazing. And you won't be able to have that full healing if you don't have that first, very far outer layer of you're a human being created in the image of God, and I'll love you because you exist. You know, having that first one, that regardless of what race you're in, regardless of what your background, your social economic status, your power, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're a human being, and having that is a very important part of being love to other people, because then you give virtually everyone the opportunity to come in and to hopefully get to a place where you can be close with them and to have your life enriched by their very presence. But like you're saying, like Tim, like it's good. Love and trust are not the same thing. They're just not. People have to prove that they're trustworthy, but you should never have to be proved that you're lovable. Because that's just, God has created us with intrinsic value. So having that value and that commitment to intimacy, knowing that, like not just allowing someone to go from, hey, I'm emphatically in love with this person that just showed up in my life, and then just let them straight to your heart. Like there's no commitment, and you're trying to give them total. That's a seed ground for resentment. Like you want to make sure, regardless if it's a romantic relationship or a platonic relationship, you want to know, is their level of intimacy and commitment matching? You know, I have a friend in my life, just a friend who came in and he was giving me lots of commitment, but not a lot of intimacy. And so it's like, it created this weird space of like, I don't know if I can trust you, because here you are, you're giving me all this time, but I don't know what's going on in your life. I can't trust you. Like, I need to know that they need to match for you to move from this boundary level to this boundary level. And so if I were to continue to allow that person to be in my close proximity, but their intimacy doesn't match, that's space for resentment. It's like, why am I sharing all my life with you, but yet you're not doing the same thing for me. Or in the same way, what if it was the opposite situation where I was getting all the intimacy from this person, learning about all the details about them, but they just randomly disappear from my life? Like, again, breeding ground for resentment. So having those checkpoints in your life of like, okay, like you have the very bottom ring. You're a human being made in the image of God. I love you. First ring. Second ring. Like, you know, are we communicating? Is this person manipulative or not? You know, just looking at that, you know, okay, maybe now they're an acquaintance. Okay, so now they're in the acquaintance section, you know, and, you know, sometimes they tell me some things that actually make sense, and it's helped me through a few things. Okay, now we'll move into the friend section. Okay, now we're in the friend section, and we're starting to, like, I'm taking a risk and sharing some parts of my life that are not the greatest, and you handle it well. Okay, now we're good friends, and then so on and so forth. And so it's just, it takes time, but it's having that intimacy plus commitment is a good way of warding against resentment. You're not just letting someone skip straight to your heart, which is the most precious of things, and then cause havoc because they skipped things where they should have taken some time at different checkpoints. And then having those boundaries set of what's yours and what's not yours, those are very important things to have so you don't form a resentment when someone's asking something of you that you're not willing to give. You know, you don't get a reward for doing something that you truly don't want to do. Like if you say yes when you, and I'm talking about something you have to do something, that's a different story. Responsibility is a different story. But in the situation where you say yes to something where you actually mean no and you're not really having to do it, there's no reward for doing something that you're not willing to do. It would be better for you to not do it and have the disappointment of not doing it with you and that person than it would be to say, yes, I'll do that, and now you're expecting them to do something in return, or, you know, you just have this expectation, this resentment towards them if they don't, because if you do something that you're not actually wanting to do, that creates a space for resentment to breed. And so by cutting out the things in your life you don't want to do, that you don't have to do with people, that prevents resentment from forming, because now if they don't do something in return, well, you didn't do something you didn't want to do either, so there's just no space, like no loss, no gain kind of thing. It's a safer place when you're not giving what you don't want to give. I think I worded that correctly. So those are some things. Those are at least 3 solid things. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. You know, have proper boundaries of where you begin, where you end, and make sure that the level of commitment, I feel like I'm about ready to flick someone off on accident. Make sure that your level of commitment... Just
do it, Brandon. Just do it.
Wait. That your level of commitment and intimacy match. You know, making sure that they are a trustworthy person and not just rushing them straight to your heart, but like taking the time to see how they handle this section and this section and this section until finally you've realized this is a trustworthy person.
Yeah, so, I think a final thought for me would be just remember that your position on something does have value, even if it's wrong. And allowing yourself to feel resentful towards people who don't see that is thinking that you have more impact in their life than you actually do. I've totally done that myself, you know? And, you know, I've quantified my own personal value in the way I see myself by how accepted I was by other people. And when those people didn't accept me, instead of just seeing it for what it was, oh, well, you know, either they just don't have space for me, they don't like me, which... shocking news, Tim, not everybody's going to like you. That was just a realization that I had to have. I just had to be honest with myself. They probably just don't like me. Maybe we just don't, it's not a good fit. Maybe they don't have time for me. For some reason, it's not working. And I have to be okay with just allowing them to create a boundary with me and respecting their boundary. Because a lot of times I've tried to just trample over that boundary and I've hurt relationships and people have given me more boundaries. I'm like, what the heck? I took a step towards you, even though I was trampling over your boundaries. But, you know, realizing your opinion, how you feel, how you think has value, even if it's wrong. You just have to go through the process of allowing people to create boundaries with you, and just look for those people that will say, okay, well, I accept you for what you are, and I see value in who you are. Let's do this together. That's the process. I mean, think about freaking penguins, man. There's thousands of them in a little squad of penguins, and the little dude makes his little penguin nest, and he just hopes that a female penguin comes by and says, I accept you, and there are so many times in this life where people are not going to accept you, not because you don't have value. It's just you're not what they're looking for right now. You can't lose hope. You have to keep going. If penguins didn't keep going, the race would eventually die out because they were like, oh no, 2 penguins said no to me. No, man. They kept going until somebody gave them their yes, and they didn't force it. That's called rape.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that would be like emotional rape or something. I don't know. I'm not trying to make light of rape at all because it's a serious topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, just remember, you have value even if you're wrong. It's okay for people to create boundaries with you because your value propositions don't line up, or the way you see each other's value doesn't line up.
Yeah.
And guys, instead of resenting people, just understand it's part of a process. It's all a process.
Yep. I love it. And keep in mind that if someone's able to set boundaries with you, you can set boundaries with them too. Like, I feel like sometimes can get resentful. I've seen people get resentful because I will introduce something new and they'll get upset because they didn't realize that they are actually able to do the same thing. And so
oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that's a great bring up, Brandon. This, and I'll shut up. If you set a boundary and somebody doesn't respect it and they run away, they weren't the right person anyways.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
Setting a boundary is the right way to get rid of the wrong people.
Yep, and it's right way also to keep the right people in.
Yeah, because think about what boundaries actually do, guys. Boundaries are designed to keep something of value safe.
Yes.
Right? And when people acknowledge that the price, the cost of entry, the price of admission is worth what's on the inside, they're the people that are going to stick around. You don't have to keep them there.
Yeah. Yep. Good. I think this was something that was said by Dr. Henry Cloud. Good relationships are built on good boundaries. Mm-hmm. So if the person is right for you and they're going to be a good friend, or in some point they're going to be a good spouse, they're going to be people that respect your boundaries, just flat out. Like, I love it when someone makes something clear to me in a relationship that otherwise I wouldn't have known, because now I know how to work with that. I know I can either talk about the boundary and see, is there anything that we can do regarding the boundary, or I can just essentially accept it. Now I know where this person at, and there's no this weird confusion of like, Boundaries are good. Boundaries keep people in your life, ironically. Like, and also interesting, this is the last thing. Boundaries, you can set up boundaries for specific parts of people's life and not other areas. You don't have to completely cut out an entire person. You can cut out specific parts of that they do. So let's say you have a friend who's really into politics and they can't stop talking about politics and it makes you anxious, but yet you have other parts of the life that you share with them that are great. It's okay to set a boundary that when we're together, I don't want to talk about politics with you. Like, we can talk about video games, we could talk about whatever, but just not that. Like, that's also okay. Like, you don't have to throw an entire person out because one area isn't great. So I don't know. I just want to throw that out there too as another method of, again, warding against resentment. But I think we've covered this well. Oh.
Yeah, real quick, guys, in chat, this book has changed my life. It's Boundaries. That's what it's called. I would definitely give it a read. They have one for just general boundaries. They also have boundaries for relationships. I guess most people could read it. Boundaries in Marriage. And it just talks about your value, why we create boundaries, what they look like, healthy boundaries. actual boundaries apart from what the world says boundaries are. It just breaks it down completely. It's a very balanced perspective on it. I highly recommend it. It's $10 ish if you have Amazon Prime. If you do audiobooks, it's free, I think, or 99 cents or something if you sign up for a trial and then cancel your trial. We're not sponsors or sponsored by them, so I can say that. But yeah, it'll change your life, guys. But boundaries, give it a read.
All right. Well, I think that covers this pretty good. So we'll close it out here. I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be live again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Where we will either have a particular topic in mind, which I think I probably will, or we'll just hang out. And if you guys want to join in and talk with us about things that are on your mind, that's also perfectly good too. Which, honestly, at any time, if you guys have anything, any kind of question or thing you want to talk to us about, let us know. Let us know in the comments. Let us know on YouTube, wherever. We love to talk about what's on your mind and kind of help with whatever thoughts that you're processing through. So let us know. We love to have you that. And if this broadcast has really ministered to you, please consider sharing it with your friends and liking it and subscribing to us on YouTube and Facebook, because we like to get this out to other people so we can help them to avoid resentment and live their best life. So please share with your friends and family so that way we can help as many people as we can with helping ward against resentment. But I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again soon. You guys have a good night. And let me see. I have to do this a little bit differently. Well, we'll just close it like this.
Keep waving, Brandon.
I'm just going to keep waving. Bye!